So with those remarks, Doc Ayers.
Thank you very much, Ralph. I think it's a pretty good crowd. You should have seen some of these banquets and places I used to go to when I was speaking and all. This is a pretty good turnout, and somebody told me to always pull out some notes out of your pocket because at least people would think that you made a little preparation towards what you were going to talk about. I really didn't, but y'all had a real nice program, and Beth did a good job, and Mary and all the reports. So this does conclude the program for tonight, and I hope you enjoyed it. But I got to get my glasses out, y'all excuse me. So we'll just sort of ad-lib a little bit and just sort of freelance a little bit and go from there. Ralph, I want to thank you very much, and if I ever get into politics, I would certainly like for you to be my campaign manager. And President Beth, Vice President Mary, members of Polk County Historical Association. Now, how's that for a start? But anyway, it's nice being here. It's nice being anyway after my golf game Sunday, and I'll try to be like an old preacher who was popular with his congregation when someone asked him what he contributed his success to, that he would always say that each time he entered the pulpit, he would bow his head for more a silent prayer and ask the Lord to fill his mouth with worthwhile stuff and nudge him when he said enough. So I'll sort of keep an eye on you, and if I see any of you dozing off anything, then I'll know it's sort of time to back off a little bit. You know, the Polk County Historical Association and the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame have a lot in common. You know, the first and foremost requisite of any group is to have a burning desire. You got to really have a burning desire to succeed. And you know, looking back over the founders, members like Bill Mundy and Ella Bruner and Georgia White and Sarah Hightower and Sarah Lightsey and Mary Lou and Bryant Davis and Pauline Pickett, and I'm sure many others that maybe I left out, but y'all followed in the footsteps and kept it going. And you know, this is a tough assignment tonight. And let me tell you, it's tough when you're speaking to people you really care about, and you really like, and you really love. Because I made a lot of talks all around the state and different places like that. And when you're with strangers, you know, you can just freewheel it pretty much. But you know, when you're at home, you know, you sort of got to be kind of careful about what you say, you know. It's when I first got over to Georgia, this fellow was up talking, and he was talking about this little boy fishing. And this little boy pulled up a catfish. And he looked at the catfish the little boy did, and he says, "Don't be scared, little fish. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to skin you, cut your head off, and eat you." And he looked right where all the Georgia coaches were seated, and he says, "The Georgia alumni group is not a very vicious group, but says if you don't win some darn football games, you'll end up like the little catfish." So we decided we'd better start to work and sort of really move on with it, and so that's what we did. You know, anytime anybody gets up to speak anything, you know, the greatest thing in the world is sort of laughter and having a smile on your face and that type thing, and you wonder why so many speakers have jokes and that type thing, but I think it's real good to have them. And you know, we've all been noticing on television with the Republicans and the Democrats and everything that's going on in Washington and the independents, and now you'll probably wonder what I am after I tell you this, but anyway, just recently, President Clinton was jogging through one of the parks up in Washington, and he came across this little boy pulling a wagon. And he went over there and asked the little boy, says, "What do you got?" He says, "I got some puppies." And he said, "What kind are they?" He says, "They're Democrats." And of course that pleased him real big, so the president went jogging on off, and the next week he and Gore was jogging through the same park, and they came across the same little boy pulling this wagon. And he wanted to impress Gore, and so he walked over there and he says, "Son, what do you got?" He says, "I got some puppies." He said, "What kind are they?" He said, "Republicans." He said, "I thought you said they were Democrats." He said, "That was last week before they got their eyes open." So anyway, and you know, by the way, Clinton's down there. You've seen the motorcade and everything down there in Atlanta. I don't know how much it's going to cost all of us and the taxpayers and everything. We need the money a lot worse to have the golf course free anyway. As for that, so I wish we had it. But also, Clinton was recently. These three little boys from Cedartown went up to Washington. They was walking along the Potomac River there, sort of sightseeing. And believe it or not, the president came along with his limousine and riding along there, and just as he got by the little boys where he sort of lost control over the car and went over into the river. And these three little boys jumped in and did a real heroic bravery act and pulled the president out, saved his life. And so the president couldn't believe it. They just thought he thought it was the greatest thing that he had ever seen. So he said, I've got to do something for these youngsters. What can I do? And so he turned to the first little boy and says, what would you like? He said, I'd like a bicycle. He said, we'll get you the prettiest bicycle that money can buy. Turned to the second little boy and said, what would you like? He says, I'd like some roller skates. He said, we'll get the best pair of roller skates money can buy. Turned to the third little boy and says, what do you want, son? He said, I want a hospital room. He said, a hospital room? What do you want a hospital room? He said, when I go home and tell my dad I saved your life, he's going to whip the devil out of me. So, anyways, I'm going on because we're getting a few little giggles anyway. Someone the other day asked me, says, Coach, when did you find out it was time to get out of coaching? And I said, well, when I used to go out and meet with a recruit and I thought his girlfriend looked pretty good. Several years after that, I'd run into a recruit and his mother looked pretty good. Wasn't but a few years after that I began to look and his grandmother looked pretty good. And I said, well, it's time for me to get out of this rat race. So anyway, I did. And you know, Marion, Beth, and all of you that taught, and Marion, all of you, but you know, and I'm sure you've heard most of these, but most kids get a lot smarter now than they used to be. They're just a heck of a lot smarter. And somebody said, well, Coach, how do you figure they're getting so much smarter? I said, well, when I was coaching here in high school, Mr. Bill, you know, gave me my first, brought me to Cedartown, but when Furpo Smith, I think, recommended it, and I never had heard of Cedartown, but anyway, I'm glad Bill and them gave me an opportunity to come anyway. But I'd go out to these grammar schools and I'd visit the different schools, and when I arrived at this particular elementary school one time, the bell rang to dismiss the students. So all these little kids came dashing out of the room, and this first grade little boy got to the top of the steps and he fell all the way down to the bottom of the steps. And of course we thought it hurt him real seriously, and his first grade teacher went running down there and picked him up, and it was Edgar Chandler. He picked Edgar up in their arms and said, cry, Edgar, cry. Just go ahead and cry. Says, cry, it's okay. Edgar looked up at her and says, cry, hell, I'm going to sue. But anyway, you know, the Sports Hall of Fame, I guess that's why Ralph and all of you asked me to come. And anyway, I'll just try to give you a few brief remarks on it. It started out as the Georgia Prep Hall of Fame. And our good friend Bill Bruner served as president of that group for 3 years. And Coach Dwight Keith and Dean Griffin at Georgia Tech worked religiously and diligently to sort of get it started. And that started in 1956. And then in 1963, it was reorganized. And the prep merged with the State of Georgia Athletic Hall of Fame to honor the prep players, the college players, the professional players, and any amateur players. And in 1978, the Georgia legislative session, the Speaker, Tom Murphy, introduced a bill, and he had the backing of Zell Miller, Lieutenant Governor at that time, and then it was passed into law by the Honorable George Busby in 1978. And sort of the purpose, you know, you start telling you some of these things, some of it's a little boring, but maybe it won't be, but the purpose of it is to honor those who, by their outstanding achievement or service, have made lasting contributions to the sports in Georgia, the nation, and the entire world. To preserve the records of the teams and individuals who deserve to be included in the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. There are a lot of deserving people that really should be in the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. That's the way it is with life. We've got one sitting in here tonight that definitely should be in, and I hope someday that he will get in. The Hall of Fame has a board. It has a governing body that is all around the different states, from one end to the other, and anyone can recommend somebody to go into the Hall of Fame. And Bill Bruner recommended me, so that's They've got it down there, recorded at the Hall of Fame. And you can recommend anybody, and then of course the records are studied out by this governing body, by the board and the governing body. And usually every year it's about 300 names that are submitted. And only about 8 people go in a year, which isn't a very large number. That includes deceased and different ones. Some of the categories that to go into the Hall of Fame are all sports. Players, coaches, contributors, writers, other sports, and multi-sports. Why they have all those categories of multi-sports, sometimes somebody will play more than one sport. Other sports, you wonder, well, God, you're getting overlap. Other sports are sometimes might be skeet shooting or pitching horseshoes, or just somebody that's done something that maybe you hadn't thought about, like football or basketball or baseball or some of the sports that we're more you're more familiar with. I haven't checked this record, but I think it's a record. It probably could go down in history. The following are members: Ray Beck, who was All-American football player; Doug Sanders, colorful pro player; Whitlow White, an outstanding pro baseball player and coach; Edgar Chandler, All-American football player; and Doc Ayers, player coach, who is very fortunate to be in. Willard Nixon, an outstanding pro player from Rome, Georgia; Ralph Country Brown, an outstanding baseball player from Somerville, Georgia; and Rudy York, an outstanding baseball player from Cartersville. I mean, think about one player over in Rome and 5 here in Cedartown, not counting even the other end of the county, Polk County. But, so, I don't know what happened to some of us, how in the heck we got in. We must have pretty good politics, I guess, back in the old days. But anyway, I can assure you that being in the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame is an honor. However, it is not near as big an honor as being with friends like you. Our local Hall of Famers are the greatest that are here in this county. Now, the reason I'm saying this, many, many small towns in the state of Georgia, I mean, and there's a lot of them, have a Hall of Fame. Americus, Lincolnton, Washington, Albany, Rome, and we could just go through the state. They have a local Hall of Fame. It doesn't cost a heck of a lot of money, and what they do, they get together and they have one social a year, and they'll have a speaker, and anybody in town is invited to come, and it's just a fun time, and maybe they give a plaque or the ones that they induct in. But you think of so many people, Beth getting up here and talking about Eastham Hill on a BN, and some over here in Rockmart on a BN, some of them locally here on a BN, Fred Park on a BN, putting up with all of us out there at the golf course, and just any number. I mean, it's so many things, and it would be, I'm not kidding you, it'd be more of an honor to me to be with y'all than the rest of them. But anyway, the governor and politics and politician enter into all our lives. I don't know how we can keep out of it. I think we'd be a heck of a lot better. You take about these founding members, Bill, Ella, and all of them that work to keep this building and other buildings. And so recently, the old board, which I don't blame them because some of my best friends on it and some of them are still on it, everything was in Atlanta, Georgia. Our office was in Atlanta, and of course we have our banquet in Atlanta. And so they were supposed to be raising money to put a Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, things were going sort of slow, and it might have been the time, and it might have been the economy, and any number of things that they couldn't get all the funds together. So Harley Bowers, who is a sports editor at the Macon Telegraph in Macon, which you can't blame him, he just approached the board, says, if I can raise the money, would y'all have any objections to taking it to Macon? Of course, everybody thought it was sort of a joke, thought he couldn't raise the money, and so they said, sure, rather than turn it down. Joe Gerson is the only one that really fought it, and I think Joe was right on it. Reason being, he took it to the politicians in his area and got 2 or 3 people and appropriated $6 million to build a building in Macon, Georgia. They're gonna have a music hall of fame down there that our great Governor Zale, y'all wonder which side I'm on, but I sort of tell it like it is, you know. I don't care which side it is. I don't know which side I am on. I'm sort of an independent, whatever's right, you know. You'd like to think that that's what you'd like to be for. But they're gonna have the Music Hall of Fame there, and they're gonna have the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame, $6 million. And a lot more. That's just to build the building, not to run it and to operate it. Now, you can't tell me that some taxpayers are not gonna be hurt. And I'm not sure that we need that kind of building. I think we just need an old building down there in Atlanta, somewhere where all these old jocks can sort of hang out and talk a little bit, you know, and reminisce and do these other things that they do. But the greatest airport in the world is in Atlanta. All your professional teams are in Atlanta: football, baseball, basketball. All the school children all over the state come to Atlanta to visit the Capitol. They had the Super Bowl in Atlanta. They're going to have another Super Bowl there in not too distant future. SEC basketball's in Atlanta. Over and over and over. Now you tell me how many people are going to drop off of 75 on the way to Florida going over to see the Hall of Fame. And after they look at it a couple of times, y'all experience a little bit here, well, I guess with y'all's building. Sometimes, you know, everybody want to come. I'm embarrassed. This is the first time I've been in the building. But anyway, it's I think if we get behind it, you know, we can do almost anything. But that's just my own. Now, a lot of people agree with me. Now, if we put it to a vote with all the members that were in there, it would be defeated by a large majority. And to me, it's just not practical, because I think you have so many people from all over the world drifting into Atlanta, and if they had it there, and like Rankin Smith told me, he says, "Hey, Coach, I will figure out something over at the Dome or somewhere, and won't cost him much money, and just put it in one of those old warehouses and goose it up a little bit, and that would be the main purpose." Anyway, I got a lot more notes, you know, but I'm not going to pull them out. But I don't know whether you have to be voted on, or how you work it, or how you handle your business, anything. But you've got 2 new members. If anybody can join, I filled out a check for Glenda and I. I don't know whether I'll come here, but don't vote on me while I'm here. Wait till I leave, and y'all might vote us out. But anyway, Bill, we appreciate what you did for me. I know would have made it, and a lot of others, and all of you. And so it is a tough job, because I like all of it. Yes,
How do you get voted on? How many votes on?
votes on the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
All these names, they keep a record, and they don't take them off the list down there. And the Hall of Fame, it's a secret type vote. They invite sports writers from different sections of the state, and some other people that are on there that they're not in the Hall of Fame, or they're just a governing body, so to speak. And so the board will narrow it down to maybe how many football players. They usually seem to take 3 football players. Now, some of them don't like to hear me say this, but they push Tech and they push Georgia like crazy. They push it like crazy. Well, I tell them, if it's a boy from Mercer or Wake Forest, West Georgia College or Valdosta State, you know, you should consider it all, and it's tough. So, but anyway, these people bet after they narrow it down to maybe 10 players, that day you vote secret ballot, and they'll narrow it down and get a sort of a majority type vote on it, and then they do that on the writers, and it's bad. So, as I say, it's some high school coaches that should be in. There's some officials that referees should be in. There are any number on account of this large category. For example, Rankin Smith came in this last year. Ted Turner, we hadn't been able to catch. He was voted in. We hadn't been able to catch up with him. I don't know where the heck he is, but if he doesn't show up next year, that's it. You know, they give him a 2-year. Before I got in, I went in and filled in for Doug Sanders. I told him I couldn't dress like him. I didn't have as pretty a girls as he had, but anyway, I accepted his platform that time. But they make you be in attendance now, be present there. But anyway, it's really nice being with y'all, and thanks for having me.